At Limavady, we believe a good whisky is best served alongside a good story. And all stories start someplace and sometime. For us, the place is a small town in Ireland about 100 kilometres northwest of Belfast. There you'll find Limavady, tucked away in the Roe Valley. It was in this town that I, one of only 3 master distillers in Ireland, was born in the family bar. You could say legacy was being shaped from my very first breath. But my story isn't just a story of coincidence. It's also one of tradition. I'm actually a descendant of the original 18th century Limavady distillers, and that's where Limavady today gets its unique bottle shape. It's an exact replicate of the original bottles found buried underneath the original distillery grounds. I was actually a distiller and a master distiller before I realised the family link with Limavady. A relative from the US here actually came and was tracing the family tree, and just happened to meet up with my brother and I one night in the local bar and said, hey, did you know that our family actually owned Limavady Distillery in 1880? And we checked it up, and sure enough, on my mother's side, the McLaughlins, there was a James McLaughlin owned Limavady Distillery in 1880. And it was then that I really decided, yeah, well, I make whiskey, why not acquire the Limavady trademark and create whiskies that I love. The name Limavady, it's actually Irish for leap of the dog. Some people in the US maybe call it Limavady, Lamavady. There's no real right or wrong way, because as I say, it's all to do with accents and dialogue. So it's leap of the dog. Imagine that Irish wolfhound jumping the River Roe and warn his master about an enemy ambush, which was King O'Cahan at the time. And it meant then that the whole land and the people were saved from this enemy ambush. I joke sometimes and say it was the Scotch coming over to learn how to make Irish whiskey, you know, because we taught them after all. Just always remember, it's a leap of the dog. You're taking your leap of faith. You're taking your leap of faith in me, and you're taking the leap of faith in Limavady Irish whiskey and enjoying it day and daily. One doesn't simply become a master distiller overnight. I spent decades toiling to make some of the most awarded whiskies in the world, earning my reputation. I wanted to do something more. I wanted to create a masterpiece entirely on my own, to build a legacy, to take my leap. With a nod to the past and a great vision for the future, I set out to fulfill my lifelong dream to craft my own exceptional whiskey by combining the precision of a master and the spirit of Limavady's namesake. I was quite lucky because I studied accountancy and corporate financial management, and then I did a chartered in purchase and supply. It was those packaging qualifications that actually got me the job at Bushmills. And then when I got to Bushmills, I got to sort of, as a hobby, begin to learn the process of making whiskey. And then I was seconded through Irish Distillers, sort of like it's like a fast-track graduate program, where I got to see all aspects of the drinks industry, especially the whiskey side of things within Irish Distillers. I was asked by the production director, hey, what job do you want? And I don't think he ever expected me to say, I want to be the next master distiller at Bushmills. It's about 7 years to learn to be a master distiller. It was quite a journey, but I loved every minute of it. Ireland was once the whiskey distilling capital of the world, and it is again on the rise. But Limavady is doing something that no other Irish whiskey has done. It is producing 100% single malt Irish whiskey that is sourced from a single cask. This means only the finest barrels can be selected as suitable to be bottled. With Limavady, I wanted to be, slight differences between them, but not big enough differences that people will actually notice huge differences between them. Whereas for years I would have maybe lumped 200 barrels together and blended out any differences between one and the other. But with Limavady Irish whiskey, with the PX, I took a sample of each barrel, each PX barrel individually, and just make sure it's up to that standard that I expect of Limavady. That's part of the joy of playing about with whiskey casks. I still get really excited about taking samples of each batch or each new barrel that comes in. I look forward to that sort of third month where you start to sample and start to pick up all those lovely flavours coming through, which has now become the backbone of what Limavady Irish whiskey single barrel is all about. It's great to hear people saying, oh, I've tried cask 35 or I've cask number 125, and there's slight differences between this one and that one, and I have 2 or 3 bottles in the cupboard and I open them and compare and contrast them. So they're actually learning the process of what us blenders need to do, or distillers need to do, in order to guarantee the quality of the Limavady liquid. The ingredients that go into Limavady seem simple. In principle, all you need is malted barley, water, yeast and oak, but you also need time. Making Limavady requires a masterful balance of art and science that is impossible to automate. It has taken decades of experience and years of patience to allow for the precise production of casks impressive enough to be bottled without blending. I always say a blended whiskey, which is a mix of malt and grain. The grain is with the blank canvas because it doesn't really bring anything to your favourite picture. The malt is the reason why you bought the picture. So therefore, I always wanted to go back to the traditional, historic, authentic way of making Irish whiskey, which is 100% malted barley in the mash bill, and therefore you have that maximum sweetness coming through and the consistency of your whiskey after maturation. So what would keep me up at night would be the quality of barrels. You can buy barrels in open market, but how are you so sure that they're going to give you the same consistent quality of whiskey over and over again? So I will only buy my bourbon barrels from Kelvin Cooperage. They will actually source select bourbon barrels from only certain bourbon distilleries down in Kentucky. I make sure that those barrels are never washed out with water, because some of the bourbon distilleries will wash out with water. I don't like water being in the barrel as it travels across the pond to Ireland, because you could get some sort of sourness or off notes from the whiskey. And then I deal with a family in Jerez in southern Spain, Antonio Paez Labata. I've been buying Oloroso sherry casks for them for 20 odd years now. So I know that they will give you the consistency, because they use a Solero basis, whereby they change out their wines, mix of new wines and old wines, and they season it for 2 years, which is the exact time that you need in order to bring the barrels home then in sort of year 3, if you like, and use that for your finish, your Pedro Jimenez finish. I always joke that the distiller needs a little 50 ml for himself, but that's exactly how it is. We sample every cask, we make sure that it's got the exact amount of time, the right amount of time in the PX to give the flavour profile that we want. And with whiskey, you're actually looking for off notes rather than on notes, if that makes sense. And of course then once you get past that, you'll start to pick up the positives and the reason why you're actually using those casks, i.e. the dried summer fruits, the vanilla, the spiciness on your tongue, the colour of the whiskey. All those sort of sensory analysis go together, which is honed over years and years and years of experience to get to this point. Now it's just like riding a bike, it's just like walking. It's just become second nature. So it's just about getting that right moment of perfection, and you bring it out of the cask immediately into an ABC. Into an ABC, then we bottle the ABC individually with that cask number. We get about 846 bottles in total, but it's that attention to detail. There's no barrel will slip through the net. Every barrel, every bottle of whiskey, of Limavady whiskey that you buy, you can be guaranteed that I've give the sign of approval. We already told you that a good whiskey is best served alongside a good story. It's also true that a good whiskey is best enjoyed when it's part of a story, which is where Limavady is meant to live, bringing people together to pull magic from the monotony of any normal night.